and my crew, today is going to be a very action-packed day.
Nice.
Starting off at the good old King Paul Bridge, to already see plenty of rail action right before us. Off in the distance, we can see the Norfolk Southern Howell transfer job still on CSX tracks. Behind us, there is a Norfolk Southern 188 parked. There's a PTI van that just drove right by me, and, which I didn't know until I left this bridge and missed it, 219 was right around the corner. Despite all these trains though, the real reason I came out here would not be seen from this bridge. So from here, I would continue to Inman Yard to see the real prize of the day, a local intermodal job working Inman Yard. Nah, I'm tripping. We have come here because parked right before us is Norfolk Southern 057, a turbine train coming out of New Orleans and heading to North Carolina with two very rare Canadian National motors and a cut of turbine parts sitting in trail.
Whoa.
And we'll eventually get to what I think these things are for soon. Now, believe it or not, this is actually one of 4 turbine trains that ran through my area in the span of about 2 months. The first one, which ran a few weeks before, was carrying the same loads that we see before us on this 057. There was another one carrying cylindrical loads that'll be assembled to form the base of several turbines. We have the 057 that's before us right now. And then there was another one that ran that once again was carrying more turbine base parts. Unfortunately for me, with final season underway and there being no class, I decided to take a break from studying and see what I think is the coolest of the 4 turbine trains that ran through here. This train had gotten here at about 3 a.m. and was supposed to have a crew called at 8 a.m. So I'd gotten up early to ensure that I was going to get here before they departed. And the crew wasn't here. And spoiler alert, they wouldn't be here for a while. So while the train isn't moving, we'll be able to get a very good look at the power. The lead unit is a Canadian National ST70M-2 with the marker lights on,
sensational,
which you really don't see too much anymore these days. And the trailing unit is a C44-9WL. The L standing for long, and this is specifically a -9 model that was only built for Canadian National and BC Rail. And if you look closely, you can see BCOL, or British Columbia, written on the nose of this locomotive. In addition to a modified cab shape and 4 windows on the nose that further distinguish this model from the regular -9s that you might see on Norfolk Southern or BNSF. While it would be a little bit of a wait until this train started moving, fortunately, since we're in Atlanta, there's always something else running. And our action would start off first with that 188 that we had seen first parked, now coming by us as it heads off to its next stop. As 188 continues on to his next stop, it was now just a lot of waiting, hoping for the crew to eventually show up on this 057. In the meantime, I just sat here in anticipation, hoping for something to either come out of the locomotive shops or for something else to be running on the main line. Chilling with a hawk in the meantime. I must have chose a good day to come out because there were a lot of trains running this morning. Even though you can't see it right now, while I was standing on this bridge, I noticed smoke coming from the tree line. The smoke's origin being from the southbound Scherer coal train coming into a stop before it proceeds down to Juliet, Georgia. And about 10 minutes after I saw the smoke from this train coming, Norfolk Southern 187 would come right behind us, slowly coming in as well to do its own stop by Inman Yard. With 187 coming along, some random auto-rack train now departing from its own stop, and more Hawks accompanying us, I turned back to see two unexpected surprises in the consist.
What do you mean by that?
Some giant old federal organization paper hopper.
What?
And this.
Oh my god. What is that?
A set of very old maintenance equipment that Norfolk Southern actually still uses on some of their maintenance runs on their system. Now, believe it or not, this crane actually isn't specific to Norfolk Southern. The large Ohio on the back indicates that this is an Ohio locomotive crane from the company American and Ohio Locomotive Cranes, a company which has been making cranes such as these for over 100 years and is quite the catalog of different cranes that railroads can choose from. I'm not exactly sure which Ohio crane we're looking at right now, but regardless, these Ohio locomotive cranes offer lifting capacities of up to 115 tons.
Incredible.
And they also have the feature of being self-propelled.
I can't believe this.
Which means that you could see this crane either running by itself or actually pulling something else if it was working on a maintenance away job. And for whatever reason, they also have some old rolling stock always accompanied with them when they're on a move. On 187, this crane is being accompanied by an old Norfolk and Western boxcar and an old Southern Railway gondola, and on the one time that I saw this crane set before this day, it had those exact same cars. What their purpose is, I truthfully have no idea. If any of you guys happen to have any information, feel free to share it. One 187 and the other auto-rack train would continue going on north until 187 eventually came to a stop. And after it did so, I would turn my attention to the other side of the bridge because we have yet another train inbounding Inman Yard. That Howell transfer job that we had seen at the very beginning of our outing has now come off of CSX tracks and is now taking whatever cut they got from CSX and bringing it to NS trackage. The action of this morning would only continue because not even 5 minutes after the locomotives passed me, I would be returning back to facing the south end of Inman Yard to see yet another train coming into Inman Yard.
What's kind over there?
Norfolk Southern 27A, bringing domestic intermodal traffic down from Rutherford, Pennsylvania, and being led by an SD70 Ace and having a familiar face as the engineer of this train.
It's popping.
27A here is actually coming to the complete end of its journey, the intermodal facility that's to our right. And after blasting the horn to let a few vehicles pass the crossing, they would promptly continue inbounding to end their journey. "27 days started rolling to a stop. I frankly don't know why. And while they did that, 187 started departing Inman Yard. And finally, 1 hour and 30 minutes after the scheduled crew time, the crew of 057 arrived to the locomotives.
Thank you.
Jesus is Lord.
At last, I would finally start to see some action with this train.
Yeah, baby.
Although the crew was here, this did not mean that the train was about to leave, because there's still other traffic in Atlanta, and they need to get the locomotive starting up, build up air, all that jazz. But at least I knew that they were going to be leaving under my watch. And soon after they arrived, the coal train that I had mentioned earlier, that's actually now visible off from the distance, promptly departed from its stop at Phoenix to continue down to Juliet, Georgia, being very nicely powered by a quartet of SD-70 aces. To continue the trend of things coming, as the power of this coal train continues south, yet another local job started inbounding towards Inman Yard. I believe this was G70 or some other local that comes out of East Point Yard, being led by a solo SD60E. In the midst of all this activity, the conductor of 057 had actually hopped out the cab and started walking the train. I'm assuming to both examine the loads and definitely to knock off some of the handbrakes that had been put down as the train had been tied down overnight. And while this was going on, 27A continued their inbound, a random light power set pulled up waiting for 27A to pass, and the head end of that local train finally came by us. With the coal train gone, the local gone, and 27A gone, the only thing immediately before us was that light power set that promptly came by running under the bridge I was on, heading to some other job. I honestly don't know what. I didn't see this power for the rest of the day. As the conductor continues to prepare the train for its departure, I looked off in the distance to see some clearance put on the signals. This clearance being for Amtrak 19, having just departed its stop in Atlanta and now continuing to its next stop in Alabama. With Amtrak going off in the distance, there was finally nothing else, at least on the Greenville, that would have been blocking 057. And so, with a local job coming off the Inman hump, finally, nearly 2.5 hours after my arrival here, 057 turned on its headlights and began departing Inman Yard. As if this train's departure couldn't be any slower, they stopped again.
Oh my goodness!
And although this train is taking forever to leave Inman, its stop right here gives us a perfect opportunity to look closely at what it's carrying. Looking closely at these turbine loads, we can see the title Vestas marked on that black cover. Vestas, as you could guess, being a turbine manufacturer, producing both onshore and offshore turbines for customers literally all over the world.
That's amazing.
The parts that we're looking at, however, seem to be for onshore turbines. And though they have a few onshore turbines labeled on their website, I believe that these components specifically are for the 4 megawatt platform. This is the model that most closely resembles the parts that we're seeing on this train. And even looking at some of the photos that Vestas has put on their website, we can see some of the same cylindrical components and what appears to be the exact same part that we're looking at 057. As for what their final destination is, I really don't know. I mentioned that this train was supposedly terminating in North Carolina, and North Carolina already has a few wind turbine farms. I haven't heard much about plans to continue to do more, but that's just what I've seen so far that makes North Carolina relevant. And although I may have mentioned that this train was coming from New Orleans, that's just where the NS origin is from.
What do you mean by that?
All of Vestas United States manufacturing manufacturing occurs in Colorado, split between two facilities. They have a blade factory in Windsor, Colorado, and looking at a Google Maps view of this facility, you can see multiple sets of large turbine blades set aside outside the building, and multiple sets of both railroad cars and railroad tracks that lead into the building. Meanwhile, their second facility is a nacelle factory. And taking a look at this facility reveals the actual loads that we are looking at right now on 057, with the same blue tarp covered parts and the white rectangular pieces sitting next to the building, and railroad tracks outside the building that have these same components loaded onto rail cars. So it would seem that these parts have come all the way from Colorado, it had been interchanged with Norfolk Southern and New Orleans, before eventually heading to what appears to be their final destination in North Carolina. If anyone has any more information besides what I've just shared, feel free to drop what you know down below. As for what is under the blue tarp, I really have no idea, but the white box looking part is the nacelle, which houses all the turbine's generating components. To keep it simple, it houses all the actual parts that you need on a turbine to create electricity from its rotation. Just based on the photos that I've seen from Vestas' website, these turbines are built from the ground up and have the blades later attached to eventually catch wind and produce electricity. So from this diagram, the nacelles that we're seeing rest at the top of the turbine on top of the base posts, right behind the rotating axis and blades of the turbine. And since there is one nacelle per turbine, from this train alone, about 20 turbines are about to get built.
Wait, no, wait.
Anyways, back to 057 in particular. After they had stopped, I'd seen the conductor get out of the cab and they started reversing a little bit for whatever reason. I really had no idea what was going on. But I knew that if they were going to be stopped, that would mean I'd be able to leave and get another shot at them before they left Atlanta. So I started making my way out of Inman Yard to visit the PTI pull-off to see what view I could get of the train. And the view of the turbines were, how can I put it, mid. But before I could leave though, I would be jump scared by a CSX manifest. With 057 still parked here, some local jobs in Inman Yard doing their work, and the CSX manifest rolling to a stop likely near Pine Street, I would finally leave the Inman area and the Hawks and come over to good old Howell Y to just find a CSX local job coming out of the Howell area and to see the tail end of that CSX manifest. 057 still hadn't been lined over the Y and up the Greenville district, and I would soon find out why. Yet another train.
Where's you from, cuz?
A CSX local led by two SD40 E3s. With the CSX manifest cleared, I knew there was nothing Norfolk Southern related that was coming down from the Greenville district, so I expected 057 to get lined soon. Before they did that though, I decided to stop by the Business with the Bell to see this parked SD40-2, which is the real Southern Heritage unit. And I would not be convinced otherwise. In waiting for 057 to finally get clearance, dispatch evidently decided that it was best that they let another train out of Inman Yard. And so while the rain started pouring and tragically got into my mic, Norfolk Southern 391 began its journey out of Atlanta and started heading down towards Macon, Georgia. And as the tail end of 391 passes, finally, 057 got cleared over Howell Y, and as last, 3.5 hours after my initial arrival trackside, this one-of-a-kind train left Inman Yard and began its journey north towards North Carolina. Believe it or not, 057 actually ended up stopping again.
Are you serious?
Yes, again, just past the Y, which was a saving grace to plenty of my friends on the Greenville district who fortunately got to see this train running in the evening. As for me though, with this train now gone out of my area, it was time for me to go back to finals and say goodbye to Atlanta.
What?
Yep, this will be my last outing before school ended for summer. And what a way to end it on a high note. There were so many trains out on this day, and the catches I got are definitely not things that I see on the regular. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, God bless. I will see you soon out on the high iron.